Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Pittsburgh Sports Memories podcast. And in this episode, we are going to throw 58 fun facts at you about Pittsburgh sports. So, Steve, the way that we're going to do this is we're going to break this up by team, and everybody might, let me try that again. Everybody, my co-host is Steve Wirt, and Steve, the way we're going to do this is we're going to break this up by team. So we're going to go Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, and college sports. And we titled this 58 Fun Facts. If you want to keep track and see if that number is actually accurate or if it was just sort of my best estimate, then congratulations on having the time to do that.
Is this like Pittsburgh Sports Memories Jeopardy? Do I have to phrase everything in the question in the form of a question? Is Aaron Rodgers going to host?
No, but kudos again. If the folks listening know some of these, then congrats, because some of these you might know, some of these you might not know, and I think some of these are just interesting, and you can kind of go home and wow your friends and family with some of the things you'll hopefully learn on this episode. So let's start with the Steelers. The Steelers have the most wins of any NFL team since the merger. So they're the most successful football team of the last 50 plus years. And they're the only NFL team with over 500 wins during that time. That's not surprising. They haven't had a losing season since 2003. So definitely a lot of success in that merger era for the Steelers. Here's something we'll talk about for all of the pro teams, the retired numbers. The Steelers have retired 2 numbers. Steve, do you know what those 2 numbers are?
That would be Mean Joe Green and Ernie Stautner.
That's correct. Those are number 75 and number 70. And that's something that I think a lot of folks don't realize. So like Terry Bradshaw's number 12, or Franco's 32, or Jerome Bettis' 36. Those numbers aren't traditionally worn, and I don't think have been worn since those guys wore them, but they're not officially retired. And you do have some numbers that get worn kind of over and over again, like Mel Blount's 47 has gotten worn since him, and I think Jack Ham's
Scott Shields was
worn.
Awesome. Yeah, Scott Shields was awesome.
And it's funny because whenever those numbers get worn and the guy doesn't measure up, people tend to get very angry. And Scott Shields was a great example of that. He was a safety back in the 90s that wore 47. And to Steve's point, he wasn't a very good safety. And just people were like, what's he doing wearing 47? Like if he were 48, I think some of the ire would have been lessened at Scott Shields, but because he was wearing Mel Blount's number. But that's the Steelers. They don't retire numbers traditionally. And Joe Green's number, they only retired a few years ago. So kind of interesting. They've only retired those 2 numbers.
Didn't somebody just wear 88 not too long? Was that Darius Hayward Bay? I remember Courtney Hawkins wearing number 88.
The kid from Penn State that they drafted this year, Freiermuth.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Freiermuth wearing Lynn Swann's number. That's right. Yeah. And somebody's been wearing 82. That was Randall. I remember Antoine Randall, and that was of course John Stallworth's number.
Right.
And Yancey Big Ben. I mean, my gosh, boy, there's 3 really good players right there.
Well, even 26 was Rod Woodson, and then Le'Veon Bell. Yeah. Had a lot of good seasons.
And Deshae
Townsend.
What about Deshae Townsend?
Yeah, Deshae Townsend. Right.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I don't know. It's just an interesting, a lot of, you could say it's kind of cool because they're only really reserving that for the best of the best. And I mean, you just had the Atlanta Falcons just retired Hank Aaron's number. If you think that sounds odd, it's because, Hank Aaron was a baseball player. So there's some teams that, the Seahawks retired number 12 because it's their fans. It's the 12th man. So, I mean, some football teams just retire like anything and everything. And the Steelers kind of, they just only do that for these very, very unique situations. But at the same time, to your point, Steve, you see guys kind of wearing these revered numbers, kind of weird. Some more Steeler fun facts. 2 of the longest receptions in Steeler history were by a quarterback and a safety. So there's only a handful of plays in Steeler history that went for 80 yards or more.
I know the quarterback.
Who was it?
I know the quarterback. Mark
Yep.
Malone.
So the Mark Malone caught a 90-yard touchdown pass from Terry Bradshaw against the Seahawks in 1981. Malone was a backup quarterback at the time, but he was pretty athletic, and they were playing him at receiver in some of these packages.
Oh, wait up. I think I know the safety too.
Who?
Chris
You're
Hope.
right. Good. Wow, good one.
Oh,
So yes, and Chris Hope had an 81-yard touchdown reception in 2003. Steve, who threw him that pass?
That would have been one Josh Miller.
Yeah, it was a fake punt against the Ravens in 2003. Josh Miller to Chris Hope, one of the longest plays in Steeler history, 81 yards. So I think that's kind of interesting that, again, only a handful of plays that went that long, and the receptions were by a quarterback and a safety. So speaking of Steeler records, the oldest record in the Steeler record book is for longest punt. It was by a guy named Joe Jerry. He had an 82-yard punt versus the Packers in 1949.
Oh, I remember that.
Another.
Yeah, that was. Yeah,
Oh
that was
yeah,
really,
heck of a game.
I just got home from the
49.
war. Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Turned on your radio and heard that one.
Like, oh yeah, I forgot around the Philco there. I don't know.
So
obviously, since my dad was like 3 years old when that happened, I was not alive.
Well, some more fun facts about that particular game. Joe Jerry also threw 2 touchdown passes and kicked 4 extra points in that same game, because not only was he the Steeler punter, he was also the quarterback and place kicker, because 1949. That game was also played at the Wisconsin State Fair Park in Milwaukee. The Packers, this would be a Packers fun fact, but the Packers for years always played 1 or 2 games a year in Milwaukee. I think they kept doing that all the way up into the mid 90s. And that was played in the Wisconsin State Fair Park. So there's some fun facts about that game.
They did that till the Brewers moved to Miller Park, because I don't think you can play football in Miller Park. I don't know if you could play a football field in there. Yeah.
So they used to play at the Brewers' old Milwaukee County Stadium.
I think so. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, 1949 would have predated the Milwaukee Brewers, so that must have been why it was at the State Fair Park.
Yeah. Well, went and got like a corn dog or whatever they had at the State Fair that year. Hey, there's my prize-winning cow.
And then walked over and watched Joe Jerry punt it for 82 yards. Speaking of stadiums, Three Rivers Stadium was around for 31 years, I believe, or 32 seasons actually. And during that time, there were 6 NFL franchises who never won a game at that stadium. The Colts.
Oh, hold on. Let me see. One of them. Hold on. Browns? No, Browns.
No, the Browns won there, although it was years. I mean, the Browns lost, I want to say, the first 16 or 17 years, but they eventually won.
Yeah.
The Colts are actually the ones that were the least successful. They went 0-11, and that included 3 playoff losses, including that 95
AFC championship. Yeah, the AFC championship game. Captain.
But there are 5 other teams. So the Atlanta.
Let me see if I guess them. Okay, Falcons. That makes sense.
Just guess bad teams during that time.
I mean, you can bad teams of the 1970s to 2000s for 100, Alex. Bad NFL teams. Let's think. No, it can't be the Oilers. So it can't be divisional rivals. So it probably has to be like an NFC team, right? I don't know. The Saints, maybe.
That's a good guess. Not the Saints, but you got the New York Jets, Detroit Lions, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Carolina Panthers. Now, to be fair,
I was on the right track with the Saints.
You were absolutely on the right track. To be fair, the Panthers played 1 game in Three Rivers Stadium. It was in the snow.
Was that the return? Travis Davis returned 99
Man, that's a good memory.
Fumble.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So in that game, it was a season where the Steelers were really bad. It was the day after Christmas. It was snow covering the field. And Travis Davis, I think that's still the longest fumble return in Steeler history, is 101 yards, because
Fred
Lane, who passed away shortly after that, he coughed up the ball into the end zone, and Davis scooped it up and ran 101 yards the other way in the snow. But yeah, so yes, the Panthers never won there, but I mean, they had 1 chance. So that was, the Steelers had some pretty good success against teams in their home stadium. One team that they have not had success on much on the road is the Rams. They have never once beaten the Rams in Los Angeles. The Rams played in Los Angeles. Never.
Ever?
The Rams played in Los.
Wait, and then wait, but where was Super Bowl 10? Wasn't Super Bowl 10 and that was in Pasadena? Was that in Pasadena?
It was Super Bowl 14, but yes, it was in Pasadena.
Oh, come on. That's almost LA,
No.
isn't it? I don't know.
That was not a Rams home game. Sorry, does not count. So the Rams played in Los Angeles between 1946 and 1994. They moved to St. Louis for about 20 years, and then in 2016 they moved back to Los Angeles. The Steelers.
Was Warren Beatty the quarterback? No.
That was a movie.
Sorry, that was a movie.
The Steelers. It actually took the Steelers 70 years to beat the Rams on the road. They finally did that in 2007 when the Rams were in St. Louis, but they've still never beaten them in Los Angeles. So Rams are undefeated all time.
Well, maybe
in Los Angeles against the Steelers.
Well, that's got to be happening in the next 4 years,
Correct.
Right? Or next 8 years. The Steelers got to play one game in LA.
Yep. So hopefully they will have the chance to do that. The Steelers have beaten the Chargers and Raiders in Los Angeles, but never the Rams.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Well,
that is a fun fact.
It is. The 1945 Steelers hold the NFL record for fewest touchdown passes in a single season. Steve, you want to guess the number there?
Was it fewest touchdown passes?
Yes.
Given up or?
No, completed.
For the completed? I don't know, 5.
That's lower. It's 0. 0 touchdown passes.
Zip. Well, you can't break that record.
No, you can't. You definitely cannot.
But you say there's a record that can never be broken.
Yep.
All he can do is tie it. Well,
here's kind of an overall NFL fun fact. 8 Super Bowls have been won by quarterbacks who started the year as a backup on opening day. And the Steelers are one of those teams. The 1974 Steelers, the opening day starter was Joe Gilliam, and they won the Super Bowl with backup quarterback Terry Bradshaw. Now that was kind of odd because Bradshaw had been the starter before that, but by this time he had lost his job, and but then he eventually came back. If you're interested in the other times that happened, the 1971 Cowboys, Roger Staubach.
Dolphins. Has to be Dolphins. 72 Dolphins, right?
No, that was the other way around.
Greasy?
Greasy was hurt, and Earl Morrall played most of that season, but Greasy was the starter, and Greasy was back for the Super Bowl.
He was okay.
Yeah, that was a good guess though, because you're right. Earl Morrall. Most people don't remember that undefeated team. Earl Morrall was the quarterback for most of that season. So it's Staubach in 71, Jim Plunkett in 1980 for the Raiders, Doug Williams in 87 for the Redskins, Jeff Hostetler in 1990 for the Giants, Trent Dilfer in 2000 for the Ravens, Tom Brady.
That's right, Tony Banks. Tony Banks was a starting quarterback for that game. I remember that.
For the Ravens, yeah, because their opening day was in Pittsburgh, and they shut out the Steelers. But Trent Dilfer was not the starter. So Brady in 01.
Even later in the year, if you remember, the Steelers beat them 9-7 in a game, and they won all the way to Super Bowl.
Yes, yeah. The Ravens did not have a good offense that year, but they had a very historic defense. And Trent Dilfer was just kind of good enough to not throw it all away, and that's Tony Banks was not. And then the last one was Nick Foles in 2017, replacing Carson Wentz. So those are your 8 times that a Super Bowl has been won by a backup. I didn't include Kurt Warner on that list because he was technically the opening day starter that year because Trent Green had gone down in preseason. So, but you could throw him on that list, if you really wanted to also. But yes, most people don't remember that Terry Bradshaw was not the starter when they won that first Super Bowl when the season started. Speaking of Terry Bradshaw, we've told this story on the show before, but a fun fact is he had surgery in 1983 on his elbow. He didn't want a lot of people to know that he was having it. It was in Louisiana. He wasn't where the Steelers wanted him to have it, so there was some disagreement there. And he registered at the hospital, but he wanted to register under an assumed name, and the assumed name he used was Tom Brady, which is just a really odd and crazy coincidence. Tom Brady was like a 6-year-old kid in California at the time. But that he would use that name when the two of them would end up being two of the most well-known quarterbacks ever. The NFL twice radically overhauled the overtime rules. In 1974, they added regular season overtime. Before that, a game would just end in a tie. You wouldn't play overtime. So that was a huge change. And then in the 2000s, they radically overhauled it again. For years, it was sudden death. Whoever scored first won. And then they changed the rules to say, well, if you kick a field goal, the other team still gets the ball back and they have a chance to score also. So those were the two times in the last, well, really ever, that the NFL really radically overhauled their overtime rules. And both times, the Steelers and the Denver Broncos played in the first overtime game under the new rules. So they played in 74, a regular season game.
Yeah. Do you have to mention the next one?
Yeah, I do. So and the second time was 2011, a playoff game where they played under those new rules. And Denver didn't kick a field goal, so the rules were kind of moot.
Nope.
But we won't talk about that.
No. Yeah, that was kind of, well, you can't beat touchdown Jesus, that's for
sure. Speaking of overtime, there are 10 overtime games that ended with the Steelers scoring a touchdown in their history. And oddly enough, 3 of them are against the Cincinnati Bengals. And I think that's interesting because
that's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, overtime games typically end with a field goal, right? I mean, that's the majority of overtime games end with field goals. You might see touchdowns a little bit more now with those new rules I mentioned, because a field goal kind of gives the other team a chance. But I mean, that's how most overtime games end. So 10 of those 10 games, the 10 people that scored touchdowns in overtime for the Steelers: Benny Cunningham against the Browns in 78, Lynn Swann against the Patriots in 81, Stallworth against the Bengals in 82, Walter Abercrombie against the Houston Oilers in 86.
Legend. Right there.
Legend. Eric Green against the Bengals in 91. Jerome Bettis twice in the 97 season against the Jaguars and Cardinals. Santonio Holmes against the Bengals. Yeah, that was.
I remember that Bettis game against the Cardinals.
Yeah, that was at Arizona. It was an overtime game, and he just rumbled into the end zone. That was the second time that season. Santonio Holmes in 2006 against the Bengals. Rashard Mendenhall against the Falcons in 2010 on opening day. And then, of course, the immortal Kobe Hamilton against Cleveland in 2016. So those are your 10 Steelers who've scored overtime touchdowns. Conversely, the Steelers have only had an overtime touchdown scored against them 4 times. That was Webster Slaughter against for Cleveland in 86, Rashean Mathis on a pick 6 for Jacksonville in 2005.
Oh man, yeah.
You remember that? Because Tommy Maddox. Yep.
Yeah.
Demarius
one's going to be
Tom.
Yeah, the Tebow game.
Yeah, Demarius Thomas in the 2011 playoffs, and then Jordan Howard for the Bears in 2017.
Good times.
We were talking.
Good times.
Yeah, all very bad memories. We talked about Rashean Mathis having a pick 6 in overtime against the Steelers. The Steeler with the most pick 6s all time, it's a tie. And one of those guys is Rod Woodson, who's a Hall of Famer and arguably the greatest defensive back the Steelers have ever had. The other guy, it's William Gay. And both those guys have 5 interception returns for touchdowns. And William Gay, I mean, he was a decent player. He played here for, a decent amount of time. But it was odd, Steve. Like, it's like anytime he got an interception, he returned it for a touchdown.
Big play, Willie Gay.
Yep.
I remember him and Joey Porter had this weird, they crawled on the ground celebration after one of his pick 6.
he had a really goofy dance. Yeah. And he got to do it a lot because again, he holds the record for most pick 6s in Steeler history. So just not the guy you would think shares that record with Rod Woodson. You'd think it'd be Mel Blount or Carnell Lake or Troy Polamalu or somebody, but nope, it's William Gay. The longest tenured Steeler ever It's Ben Roethlisberger with 18 seasons and counting. Mike Webster's second with 15
No,
seasons as a
wow.
Steeler. Yeah, no one's played as a Steeler for
I would
longer.
have. So Ben is going to be the longest. Wow, that's one that unless Chris Boswell plays forever, that's the only guy I could see like currently having a chance. You know?
Yeah, yeah. I think, had Gary Anderson's contract situation been different, I think he would have been a Steeler for probably more than 20 years because he's got played forever. But yeah, Mike Webster, I think Hines Ward's high on that list. John Stallworth's high on that list. Gary Anderson's high on that list. But yeah, Ben has 3 more seasons than Mike Webster, the second place guy. So
That's crazy. How
yeah.
many? I'm trying to look at how many Chris Boswell's even been in the.
Oh, it's
See,
maybe been 6 or 7 at the most. And he's got to play for a lot longer than that.
He's got a ways to go.
So here's one of my favorite Steeler trivia
He's
questions.
already 30 years old. He's not going to make it.
Yeah.
He's already. I didn't realize he was that old. I thought he was still like early 20s. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
It's not going to work out too well.
Kickers. I mean, Adam Vinatieri was 49 or something, and he just retired this last year. So you never know. Here's one of my favorite Steeler trivia questions ever. Super Bowl 43. That's a season and a game we really have not covered in depth on the show. We certainly will at some point. That is the game.
We'll save that for the Super Bowl season, like in February, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. But that is a game where the Steelers played the Cardinals. It's one of the greatest Super Bowls ever. And during that game, the Steelers scored 3 touchdowns. 2 of them were arguably the greatest touchdowns in the history of the franchise: the James Harrison 100-yard interception return, and of course the Santonio Holmes last-second miracle catch on the sidelines. But do you know who scored the other touchdown in that game for the Steelers?
Was that Marion Barber III? I don't know. No, I don't know. It was some no-name running back, I think, or was it Ben? Because no, Ben was called down at like the 1, wasn't he? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think Ben had a touchdown taken away on a replay.
It was like some scrub running back from Wisconsin.
You are correct. Sure. It was. I don't know if you went to Wisconsin, but it was Gary Russell. So
that's it. Yeah, or Minnesota. It was either Minnesota or Wisconsin, one of those Big Ten schools in the north.
The main running back that year was Willie Parker. They had Gary Russell was kind of their short yardage back, and they were at the 1-yard line. They put in Gary Russell, and he plowed in for the first touchdown of the game. Gary Russell finishes Super Bowl 43, Steve, with -3 yards rushing. So
and 1 touchdown.
Wow,
awesome.
But I always love that. I always think that's a great trivia question because, again, they scored 3 touchdowns in that game, and literally 2 of them are the most famous ever. And it's like, well, who scored the third? And you have to be a real diehard Steelers fan to know that it was Gary Russell, or even remember who Gary Russell was. So I always love that one. And then last but not least,
I always get him and Marion Barber III confused.
Marion Barber
think ever played for the Steelers.
No, and he probably.
I don't think he ever played for the Steelers.
Yeah, and he probably did a little bit more with his career than Gary Russell ever did. One final fun fact for the Steelers: you always think of the Rooneys as owning the Steelers. Who owns the Steelers? Oh, the Rooney family, and they do. They do own the Steelers, but they're actually part now of a larger group of investors, which include a lot of people. And a lot of people in that group do have the last name of Rooney. And then there's a lot of people that are like hedge fund managers or private equity investors. But there's also some other names on that list that you may not know about. And just a couple of interesting names on that list. Thomas Tull is part owner of the Steelers. He's the founder of Legendary Entertainment. That's a huge film company, which made the Christian Bale Batman films, amongst others. That was one of the reasons that one of those Batman films filmed in Pittsburgh, because of the connection there with Thomas Tull. Joshua Harris and David Blitzer, they're the owners of the Philadelphia 76ers and New Jersey Devils. And they're also part owners of the Steelers. So there's a fun fact. And then John Stallworth, Hall of Fame receiver who played for the Steelers for 14 seasons. He owns part of the Steelers.
He only owns the wide receivers. So.
So yeah, Mario Lemieux, not the only former player to own a Pittsburgh team. John Stillworth actually does own part of the Steelers. Now they don't.
You'd think as an owner he could speak up in like owners meeting, like, "Hey, can I get my number retired?"
Yeah. He should really work on that.
You're like, well, give us another couple mil and we'll think about it.
You only own 4% or whatever, so it doesn't count. So those are our Steeler fun facts. Moving on to our beloved hockey team, the Penguins. The Penguins have won 5 championships. 3 of the Penguins' 5 championships were won with interim head coaches.
Fun times.
So if you ever want to have success and win a Stanley Cup for the Penguins, make sure you get a substitute head coach somewhere during the season.
What would be more fun is to name the coaches that were fired for the interim.
Now
that's the ultimate trivia question. I know one's Michel Therrien and the others. I don't know that guy that we talked about him for like briefly. I remember one podcast.
Yeah, I want to say his name was Mike Johnston.
That sounds right. Yeah.
He was fired in 2016, and Mike Sullivan took over and won the Stanley Cup. I mean, that guy was the most generic looking. He was like a minor league coach his whole career. Yeah, we talked about that in a previous episode. Michel Therrien. And then 92, when Scotty Bowman took over, it wasn't because somebody was fired. It was because Bob Johnson, tragically became ill and passed away.
I don't know that Scotty Bowman's like, let me go get my Hall of Fame Stanley Cup winning coach off the bench.
Yeah.
That's like literally having like Bill Belichick as an assistant coach. It's I'll just bring this guy in.
Yeah, that was
any good.
A little different of a scenario there. You didn't exactly like promote the minor league guy like you did with Bausma and Sully. Playoff overtime. To me, playoff overtime is the most exciting thing in sports. Playoff overtime in hockey. Some playoff overtime facts for the Penguins. Mario Lemieux never in his great career did so many things. Never scored a playoff overtime goal. Brooks Orpik and Darius Kasparaitis scored as many playoff overtime goals as Sid and Gino. All those guys scored once in playoff overtime.
The best part is both those are, I think, eliminating like series clinching goals, aren't they?
Oh yeah, you're right. Because Orpik knocked the Islanders out of the playoffs, and then Casper was against the Sabres, as we talked about in one of those previous. It's a good point, Steve. I forgot about that. Those were both series clinchers. Since 2013, the Penguins have played in 23 overtime playoff games, and they have won 6 of those. So recent years have not been kind to the Penguins in playoff overtime, but they've managed to win 2 Stanley Cups during that period. So you got that going for them. The Penguins have also lost, at the time of this recording, 3 consecutive playoff openers in overtime. So the Islanders, Canadiens, and then Islanders again last year, the first game of the playoffs, game 1 of the opening series, the Penguins dropped all 3 of those in overtime. So not a good recent track record of overtime for the Penguins. The Penguins' all-time leader in penalty minutes, Steve, you want to guess at that one?
I think I've looked this up before.
I'll give you a hint. It's not who you would think it is. It's not like Darius Kasparaitis or Rolf Samuelsson. It's not like a bruiser.
I was thinking like Battleship Kelly or somebody like that. Or
that's a good guess too.
That was back in the 70s.
It's a more recent player. It's a player from the 90s.
Oh, it's a more recent. Rick Tocchet? I don't know.
That's a good guess. It's Kevin Stevens.
Man, I was close.
You were close. Yeah, Kevin Stevens, the all-time leader in penalty minutes. And part of that record is, you have to play for the team for quite a while. And Stevens did. Malkin is closing in on that record and probably will eclipse.
I can't believe Malkin has that many penalty minutes.
Well, Malkin takes a lot of penalties. Wow. I mean, he just does. He's not like a dirty player, but he does take a lot of penalties. Some of them are very bad. So he will probably eclipse Stevens before it's all said and done.
Well, there is the patented, let's take an offensive zone penalty. That's right. To be his MO.
Yeah, well, we're really pressing. We're about to score a goal. Whistle, arm in the air, 71 with a cross check.
Yeah.
Uh,
Like it's like 100 feet from your own net. Like, what are you doing? Like, really?
yep. Here's a good one. The Penguins had the last ever unmasked goaltender. That was fearless Andy Brown in 1974, or maybe as he should have been called, stupid Andy Brown, for trying to stop pucks
Did you
without a
say
mask.
1974?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Wow, I can't believe they let a goalie play without a mask in 1974.
I know
Wow,
with the
that's
helmets.
insane.
I know with the helmets you were grandfathered in. If they made a rule at some point, you had to wear a helmet. But if you didn't, if you played
I
before
remember
they made the
that. Yeah, I
rule,
remember. Yeah,
because there was a guy that played for the Capitals. I can't remember that.
it was there was a guy who
He
played for the Sharks that didn't. Yeah,
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 I mean,
didn't
and he
have it.
played for like years, and he just never wore a helmet, just so it could be the answer to a trivia question. But the helmet thing, at least, I don't know, not very smart either. But puck's flying at you, and you're not wearing a mask.
Well, people are literally shooting the puck, and your job is to stop it.
Right.
Like if you're a forward or defenseman, that necessarily isn't your job. But like as a goalie, that's kind of your whole job. So I would think I would wear a mask. That's just me. But hey, to each their own. I can't believe and two, I think back in like the old days, they didn't curve the sticks as much, so you couldn't shoot the puck as hard. But like definitely by the 70s, people were curving the sticks pretty good there. I mean, that really makes the shots go a lot faster. So yeah,
Fearless Andy Brown. He was
he was
fearless.
pretty
He didn't
fearless.
care.
Yeah. Didn't probably have any teeth and broke his nose a lot, but hey, good for him.
But he's fearless.
Yeah.
The Penguins. This is another fun fact. The Penguins have never won a Stanley Cup on home ice. The only team that has won a Stanley Cup on Pittsburgh soil is the Detroit Red Wings in 2008. The Penguins have been around since 1967, but Pittsburgh actually had an NHL team back in the 1920s. They were called, this is pretty original, the Pittsburgh Pirates. They existed in the NHL between 1925 and 1930. And kind of their contribution to Pittsburgh history is they were the first team in the city to wear black and gold uniforms.
I don't think I covered them in the defunct team thing, did I? No, I didn't. No.
We'll have to go back and do a follow-up
Yeah.
then, Steve.
Yeah.
An addendum to that episode.
Add it in. I'm sorry, I forgot about the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Well, and here's another
The Hornets were much more successful anyway, but
they were. I mean,
they weren't a Stanley Cup team though. They weren't an NHL team. They were whatever that other league, the minor league was.
Yeah, and this was again the 1920s. I mean, how popular was hockey at that point? But here's another contribution they kind of made later. In 1980, the Penguins wanted to change their colors. The Penguins had always worn like this kind of light blue and white sweater. And in 1980, this was after the Pirates and the Steelers had both won championships the year before. They wanted to change the black and gold to match the Steelers and the Pirates and this whole City of Champions theme. Well, the Boston Bruins objected, and they went to the NHL and they said, no, those are our colors. The Penguins aren't allowed to do that. But the NHL allowed it because the Penguins said, hold up a second. This team in the 20s, the Pittsburgh Pirates, they wore black and gold before Boston did. So we actually invented black and gold, Boston. So the NHL actually, because the Penguins made that argument that we actually had black and gold, 50, 60 years before that they were allowed to do that, and the NHL agreed and told Boston to stick it. So that was, I thought that was kind of a fun fact there. Wayne Gretzky, of course, widely recognized as one of the greatest player ever, although a lot of us in Pittsburgh wouldn't agree with that. His final game ever was against the Penguins in 1999. That was at Madison Square Garden, and his final moment in the NHL was sitting on the bench watching Jaromir Jagr score the overtime goal to end his career. So, haha. Craig Patrick, Steve, Craig Patrick, of course, the general manager for the Penguins for years. He's the one that made the famous, Ron Francis, all famous in trade in '91 and drafted Sidney Crosby years later. So Craig Patrick, obviously a well-known figure in Penguins history. Did you know that Craig Patrick is currently employed by the Pittsburgh Penguins as a scout?
Really? I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. He actually
Good for
works for
him.
the Penguins as of this recording. So
Again.
yeah, I did not
Wow.
know
Good
that.
for him.
So that's kind
I
of
did not know
interesting.
that. He kind of
Hockey
like how Jim Leland's a scout. He's like probably like that. It's just like a whatever. Do you
honorary
think they actually
title.
pay him money?
I,
Do you think they actually pay him money?
I don't know. That's a great question. I would think if you're on the employed by the team that you would get some kind of a financial compensation. But who knows?
He just gets to go. He gets to get to go to games for free. Get free coffee from Dunkin' Donuts at the arena. I don't
Maybe.
know. Gets to like if he shows up with his 1980 gold medal, they like really like give him an extra cream or something at the Dunkin' Donuts.
So Craig Patrick obviously,
Craig Patrick.
yeah, Craig Patrick obviously is
He's the
manager.
son of a. Isn't his grandfather? He's relation to the guy who the Patrick. Isn't there a trophy in hockey named after the Patrick?
Yeah, I think
he's related to somebody famous.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. So Craig Patrick obviously made a lot of trades in his time as Penguins general manager because, I mean, hockey. I'd probably Steve, hockey's a sport where you see more trades than any other sport.
He's the grandson of Lester Patrick, who I've heard of before. Yeah,
Lester Patrick. Okay.
Yeah, he was with the Rangers for a long time.
Okay. So the Penguins, again, lots of trades over the years. The team who the Penguins have not traded with for the longest, the New York Rangers. The last Pittsburgh trade with the Rangers.
It's that darn Lester Patrick. He won't allow it.
It was February 10th, 2003. And that was a trade where the Penguins sent Alexei Kovalev back to the Rangers for like a bag of pucks, basically. And
I guess the trade was so bad, the Rangers like, we can't do it no more.
Well, it was probably much worse for the Penguins. But yeah, they have not traded with the Rangers for almost 20 years. So that's kind of odd. And I don't know if that's just, the two teams have just never found common ground or if there's more to it, but I just thought that was interesting. The Penguins have only had 4 captains since 1987. Mario Lemieux, Ron Francis, Jaromir Jagr, and Sidney Crosby. The captain before Lemieux took over, you'll never guess.
Never guess it.
No, and again, folks listening out
there, not John Cullen.
No,
John Cullen.
Nope, it's Dan Frawley.
Oh, well, I wouldn't have got that.
And again, if you remember,
he's
Dan
no
Frawley,
Davey Hannon, that's for sure.
Yeah, if you remember Dan Frawley, congrats on being the most diehard Pens fan ever, because Dan Frawley played in 37 NHL games and spent most of his career in the minors. Even after he was the captain of the Penguins, he got sent down to the minors and only appeared in 37 games in the pros. So why he was captain, I have no clue. The only thing I could find was that he was kind of an older player, and I guess in the locker room and stuff, people saw him as kind of a leader. But I mean, he was a no-name player that barely ever played in the NHL, but he has the distinction of being the captain of the Penguins before Mario. So good on him. Just like the Steelers, the Penguins have only retired 2 numbers. Those 2 numbers are number 21, Michel Briere, who was a young superstar for them in the 70s, who tragically died in a car accident. And then the other number is 66. And if you don't know whose number that is, then probably not a diehard Penguins fan.
Sure. Who is that?
Yeah.
Go
Google it. You'll find out.
Okay.
The team that the Penguins have the best winning percentage against all time is the Winnipeg.
I was gonna say the Winnipeg Jets. Oh well.
Yeah. Sorry, I should have paused on that one.
I don't know.
It is the Winnipeg Jets. Yes. That franchise for a while.
And they didn't exist for a couple of years. Wow.
Well, they used to be the Atlanta Thrashers. So that's the same franchise. There was a Winnipeg Jets that moved to Phoenix and became the Coyotes. And then the Atlanta Thrashers became the new Winnipeg Jets. So that franchise, the one that used to be the Atlanta Thrashers.
Okay.
It was not a Cleveland Browns thing where they took over the history. So
So technically the Arizona Coyotes are still the Winnipeg Jets.
Correct. Yes.
So Team Mussolani, or I can't think of another Winnipeg Jet. I don't know.
Yes, that's a different franchise. But the Penguins have a 77 win percentage against that franchise. Of the NHL's 31 other teams, the Penguins only have a losing record against 7 of them. The 7 teams that the Penguins have a losing record against are the Sharks, Kings, Blues, Flyers, unfortunately.
Islanders and Canadians.
Canadians
Islanders and
are one.
Canadians. Islanders and Canadians.
Canadians, not Islanders.
Not the Islanders?
Well, because
Oh.
we're counting, regular season, not playoffs. And then Bruins and Blackhawks are the other 2. The Penguins are
the original
exactly
6. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean the Penguins stunk for a long time, so that makes sense that some of those old school teams. I mean, all those teams that I just listed, except for the Sharks, have been around for a while. The Penguins are exactly 500 against the Las Vegas Golden Knights, and as of this recording, have yet to play against the Seattle Kraken. The most common playoff opponent, Steve, you know this one.
Most common playoff.
Yeah,
opponent.
the team that they've played the most in the playoffs.
Capitals, maybe.
Yes, the Washington Capitals. The Penguins.
It
is
the Capital. It is the Capitals. So
yep,
yeah.
They've played each other in 11 playoff series. The Penguins have won 9 of those 11.
Or Capitals.
Yep.
Sorry. But you know what? Do you got the record for the Penguins against the Islanders? Because it's not good. It's like one. What, they've beaten them once in the playoffs?
Yes.
I think it's the Brooks Orpik. I think that's it. That's the list.
That's the list.
On a miracle Brooks Orpik goal. In game 7 in overtime. That's it. That's the only time.
But Steve, these are fun facts, not dreary, depressing facts. So we left that one off. Mario Lemieux holds a ton of records, obviously, for the Penguins. One of the most impressive records that Lemieux holds, it's an NHL record. Lemieux once scored 13 shorthanded goals in a season. That was in the 88-89 season. Could you imagine, I don't even know if a team can score 13 shorthanded goals in a season, and Mario did that by himself in 1 year. That was the year that Wayne Gretzky got 30 more votes for the MVP because, hockey.
Well, he deserved it.
Penguins' record for most penalties in a single game was on October 30th, 1988, that same season at Madison Square Garden against the Rangers, where the Penguins incurred 32 penalties.
This is as a team, not as a team. One person.
No, but I will give you.
How did that Islanders game with Gillies and all them not have more?
I was surprised. Gosh. Yeah. I would have thought that would have been the record, but it's not. It's a 88.
I mean, even the goalie. Even the goalies got in a fight.
They did. Yeah, and maybe it was just because the rest of that game didn't have a bunch of penalties. I don't know. The most penalty minutes, you were kind of alluding to this. Most penalty minutes incurred in a game by one player was Russ Anderson against the Edmonton Oilers in 1980. Russ had 51 penalty minutes in a 60-minute game.
How do you even do that? What's considered a high ice time, 40 minutes, 30. What's Chris Letang?
28.
Even
30,
in ice, yeah. It's you don't even get that much ice time. Yeah, good gravy.
Yeah, so kudos to Russ.
That's impressive.
For really reaching high there. The Penguins,
what did he do? I don't even know how you do that.
Well, I mean, you could get the 10-minute major. But then, how do you do that without getting a game misconduct?
I guess back in the 70s.
Yeah, I don't know. But yes, that's the record that will probably not be broken. So kudos to Russ. He'll be in the Penguin record book for a long time. The Penguins have held the #1 overall draft pick 3 times in their history, and all 3 times they struck gold. Mario Lemieux, Marc-Andre Fleury, and Sidney Crosby. They've had the #2 overall draft pick 5 times. Those have been a little more mixed. Those picks, Jordan Staal, Evgeny Malkin, Craig Simpson, all 3 of those guys had pretty good careers. Blair Chapman, not so much. And then Steve Rex, who was actually the first ever draft pick of the Penguins when they were an expansion team. And Steve Rex actually chooses to join the Canadian national hockey team rather than play for the Penguins because, God save the Queen or whatever.
Well, like back then too, you got to remember, like, remember the draft was different. Like, you weren't allowed to draft players from like Quebec or something, or like Canada. It's like literally, like, could you imagine 1967 not being able to draft players from Canada? That's insane. Like, you're literally like, it'd be like the NFL having a draft and be like, okay, you can't draft players from the United States. All right.
Yeah, that would be
How's that gonna work
problematic.
out for you? Yeah. It's like, uh,
We talked about the Penguins' recent track record with playoff overtime, but their recent track record for playoffs is pretty good. They made it to the playoffs 15 consecutive years and counting. That is not only the longest active streak in the NHL, but the longest active streak in North American pro sports in general. So you have the Penguins with 15, you have the Minnesota Lynx in the WNBA with 10, you have the Dodgers in baseball with 8, the Houston Rockets with 8, and the Kansas City Chiefs in the NFL have 6 consecutive playoff appearances. So the Penguins right now have the longest streak going for making the playoffs. Speaking of the playoffs, the Penguins have never lost a game 7 on the road. They've played 6 game 7s on the road all time, and they've won all 6 of them. That's pretty impressive.
that is the weirdest. Yeah, that's the weirdest stat ever. That really is odd. Yeah, they've never lost a game 7 on the road. No,
No.
you're not including like game 5s or anything like that, like when they had the shorter series.
No. These are game 7s. No, that's a good point. That's a fair point, because when they had the 5-game first round series, they definitely lost at least one of those to the Islanders.
Did they? And they lost. Didn't they lose? They lost. Didn't they lose to St. Louis way back when in overtime? Or
Probably. They lost a game.
They game 7. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, again, I however far back that goes, but still pretty impressive. Game 7's a very high pressure situation. Now, conversely,
they do
at home. Penguins are 4-7.
Yeah.
4-7 in home game 7. So if you're going to go 7 games in a series, you want the Penguins to be playing that game 7, not in Pittsburgh. Speaking of road game 7s, when the Penguins beat the Red Wings in 2009 to win the Stanley Cup in a road game 7, it meant that all 3 Pittsburgh's pro sports teams had won a championship in the city of Detroit. The Pirates in 1909, the Steelers in 2005, and the Penguins in 2009.
Wow.
So
maybe we should play more championships in Detroit.
Yeah. So it's been good to the city of Pittsburgh. I mean, oddly enough,
Pitt did win the Little Caesars Pizza Bowl there too. So
well, yeah, you got to throw that in. I mean, that was big.
I mean, Stanley Cup Little Caesars Pizza Bowl. I mean, it's right there.
Those 3 franchises, only one of them has won a title in Pittsburgh. That's the Pirates. So but Detroit is a good place for Pittsburgh franchises.
Nice.
So those are our Penguin fun facts. On to the Pittsburgh Pirates. The first, yeah, these are.
This could get ugly. This could get ugly in a hurry.
It could. The first ever manager for the Pirates was a Civil War hero. That's how long the Pirates have been around. It's a guy named Al Pratt.
Wow.
Yeah, he fought in the Civil War. When he died in
any famous battles? I don't know. Like,
I don't know.
Was he at Gettysburg? Antietam?
That's a good question. We could probably look that up.
He was at Petersburg. He was there at Appomattox. He's like, I think I'll go play some baseball while General Lee surrenders. I'm assuming he's general for the North. I'm hoping he was a general for the North.
He was. He was actually, when he died in 1937. He was buried. His family. He had requested to be buried in his Grand Army of the Republic uniform. So
nice.
Yeah. The Pirates are one of 12 Major League Baseball teams to use the third base dugout as their home dugout. Most of the time.
That's right. Yeah.
Most of the time, the first base dugout is supposed to be the home dugout, but the Pirates use the third base one. And the stated reason for that is to provide the players a view of the Pittsburgh skyline, presumably to take their minds off of, the game, which usually is they're losing. we talked before about winning championships on Pittsburgh soil. The last team to do that was the 1960 Pirates. And did you know that as of the time of this recording, 11 players from that 1960 team are still with us, which is kind of hard to believe
Wow,
because, yeah, that was
I
61
can think of
years
two
ago.
off the top of my head. Yeah, Bill Mazeroski and Dick Groat, right? Dick Groat's
Yep,
still alive,
yep.
I think.
Those two,
Yeah.
Benny
Wow.
Daniels, Roy Face, Vern Law, Bob Otis, Ducky
Wow.
Schofield, Joe Christopher, Bob Skinner, Bill Verdon, and Roman Mayhaus. So something was.
Bill Verdon's still alive?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Bill Verdon was old when I met him, and like when I was in like third grade, I met him one time, and I can't believe that. Wow. Oh, good,
Yeah.
good for him.
He's
He outlived Steinbrenner, so he got the outlast laugh on getting fired there.
yeah.
Take that, Steinbrenner.
He's 90 years old. Yeah. So something in the water that those 1960 Pirates were drinking, obviously, because it's just hard to believe that 11 guys from that team are still alive. There's only one Pirate ever that hit more than 50 home runs in a season. It wasn't Barry Bonds.
Not Stargell either, huh?
It wasn't Willie Stargell. Wasn't even like Brian Giles or Kutch or one
Ralph
of those recent
Kiner,
guys.
maybe.
You got it. It was Ralph Kiner. He did it twice.
Well, I heard we can finish in last without him. So
yeah. So what Steve? So Kiner did that twice in 47 and 48. And what Steve's referring to there is Branch Rickey was the general manager of the Pirates in the early 50s, and there was a contract dispute. And Rickey famously said, "Hey, we can finish in last place without you." So he traded Kiner to the Cubs, I think. So that was the end of Ralph Kiner's time in Pittsburgh.
Sounds. Yeah. Well, Branch Rickey, he was a good baseball guy, so I think he knew what he was doing. I'm going to say that. I mean, he had all them great years with the Dodgers.
Yeah, I mean, he integrated baseball. So
and then the Pirates. I mean, the Pirates, like, because what, the 40s? Well, the Dodgers were better in the 50s than the 40s, so I don't know if that was a team that he had built, But I think I don't know. I wonder if the 60 team, I'd have to look into that, see how much in a hand, if any, like Branch Rickey had in building that team. But
that's a great question. Yeah, we have to delve into that 60 team at some point on a future episode because there's a lot of.
It's just so before my time. Yeah, it's just so before my time, I think, is why I've never really. Although I have gone, I did one year. I went to the Mazeroski wall and sat outside and listened to the radio broadcast of that game 7. That's cool. That is a cool thing to do. And like, it was really neat to listen to that. And if you ever get a chance to do that, I always recommend. It's a fun thing to do. And it's October, so normally the weather is pretty nice. So, but
yeah.
Times. That's actually coming up soon. October.
It is. Yeah. The Pirates don't have any 300 game winners. The Pirates have had some good pitchers over the years, but 0 300 game winners. And they only have one 200 game winner, and that was Wilbur Cooper, who played from 1912 to 1924.
Pirates have never had pitching. I think that's the one thing, and maybe that kind of alludes to their glass of success, is they've never had great pitching. But
yeah,
I mean, they've had.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Steve. Like, if somebody said who was the greatest pitcher in Pirate history, I mean, what's your answer?
Steve Blass? I don't know. Vernon Law, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, Doug Drabick, maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's a bunch of guys with kind of short-term success.
Yeah.
And like Vern Law and Steve Blass, and their short-term success won championships. So you don't want to, short-term success isn't totally fair.
Bert Blyleven, they had Bert Blyleven, but he only played for them for 1 year. Like you said, he didn't really have a long career with them. So.
Well, Bob Friend was another one that was, he was key for a long time. But again, it's hard to name the list, right? So it's not surprising that they don't have any 300 game winners, and that the only 200 game winner is a guy that is not well known.
Talk about hitters, though. The Pirates have had a lot of great hitters. That's been their MO.
Yeah, for sure. Here's a fun fact. In 1987, RBI Baseball became the first ever video game to be licensed by the Major League Baseball Players Association and thus include real baseball players. That game had 8 Major League Baseball teams and 2 All-Star teams. The Pirates were not one of those 8 teams because, they sucked at the time and they only wanted to have good teams. But on the National League All-Star team, there was a Pirate. Steve, do you know who the only Pirate was in RBI Baseball, the first ever baseball game with?
What year was this again?
87.
87. Only Pirate in 1987. Jason Thompson. No, he was too late. Mike Diaz. I don't know. He was never an all-star. Boy, that's tough. Dale Berra. I don't think he was ever an all-star. I don't know. I don't know. Rod Scully. Let's go with Rod Scully. Why not?
It was the immortal Al Pedrique.
Oh, Al Pedrique. Oh man, he was a shortstop, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was a shortstop. I don't know if he actually,
yeah,
I don't know if he actually made it to like an actual All-Star game. I don't know.
But he just was an All-Star.
Well, I mean, he was like the number 8 hitter for the National League. He wasn't very good in that game, and I think they were just kind of picking. Like you couldn't. The way they did it in that game, and this is one of these like Tim remembers because he played RBA baseball for hours and hours in his childhood. But the way they did it was, like the St. Louis Cardinals were in the game. So you couldn't have Vince Coleman or Willie McGee or Jack Clark or whoever on the All-Star team because you already had the Cardinals. And you couldn't have Kirby Puckett or whoever, because you already had the Twins in the game. So the All-Star players were all guys that weren't on other teams that were already in the game. So you had guys like Tim Raines because you didn't have the Expos. So they were kind of, I don't know if they're really going for like actual All-Stars or just decent players on other teams. I don't know how Al Pedrique made it in there because he was a shortstop that didn't play for the Pirates for very long. He later became a manager.
He's the base coach. Yeah, he's a manager.
He was a manager for the Diamondbacks years later. Anyway, I just always thought that was a fun fact. Here's a fun fact that's going to shock you. Since 2004, the Pirates have never ranked higher than 20th in Major League Baseball salary. An unrelated fun fact is that the Pirates have been owned during that time by a very, very cheap man who swindles the customers year after year. So those two things are totally
feeling unrelated. That's more opinion than I think that might be a little more opinion than fact,
the salary thing is a fact. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you take your facts where you can find them. So
here's a good one, Steve. I want to have you guess at this one. The Pirates' most common opponent. They've played this team over 2,500 times.
It has to be the Phillies.
It's not.
Giants?
Nope.
Not the Giants. Well,
nope.
I don't know then.
It's the Chicago Cubs.
Oh man, the Cubs,
yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I that's.
Well, they've been playing the Giants. Well, like I remember watching a game and they said besides the last year when they didn't play the Giants, they've been playing the Giants since like 1890 or something. Like, wow.
Yeah,
but I guess
I would have guessed the Reds too because I think the Reds have been around that long. The Phillies, like you said, I would have probably guessed the Phillies first, but it's the Cubs.
Wow.
Yep.
And that's just stupid. Like they should really they need to be back in that division with the Mets, Phillies, all that silliness. Do something with the Marlins. I don't know what you do with the Marlins, but the Pirates should be there and the Marlins should be, I don't know, playing in Cuba. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good point. You're right, Steve. That's probably why it's not the Phillies or the Giants because for the last 20 plus years, the Pirates have not been in a division with them, but they have been in a division with the Cubs.
Yeah, that's probably why. Because like I said, like I don't know how long have the Cubs have been around a long time too, though.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and that's why it isn't the Cardinals or the Reds because remember the Cardinals and the Reds were in the West Division.
Yes, good call.
Way back when
yeah,
was
good
the
call.
NL East, NL
You're right.
West. Yeah. Remember the Braves were in the NL West for no apparent reason. It's like, whatever. Hey. I mean, I didn't realize Atlanta was so close to LA on the West Coast. They're like right beside each other.
Well, yeah. I mean, that was just kind of expansion and.
Well, if they can do that crap, then Florida can go play LA. We can play. I mean, it just like, dude, we should be playing the Mets and the Phillies and the Cubs and if we ever play the Brewers ever again, who cares?
Some more fun facts. The Pirates played in the first ever World Series in 1903, which they lost to Boston.
In 7 games is 7 or 8 games because it was a 9-game series.
It was a 9-game series. I think it might have went 7, but it wasn't a game 7 because, like you said, it was a 9-game series.
Yeah.
Speaking of the World Series, they've been playing
Royal
that.
Rooters.
They've been
The
playing
Boston
World
fans were
Series.
called the Royal Rooters. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Royal Rooters.
That's a fun fact.
Like that. Yeah, there's a fun fact. Yeah.
So as we said, they've been playing the World Series since 1903. That's over 120 years. And in the history of the World Series, there's only been 11 times where the World Series did not end with an out. So that means that somebody's scored a run. And the Pirates and the Yankees were involved in 2 of those 11 times. One was, of course, the Mazeroski home run, which we referenced earlier. The other time was 1927. Yep.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, when the World Series ended on a wild pitch by the Pirates.
They got swept. Yeah,
but that's how that series ended. Was a wild.
Yeah,
pitch.
we were going to beat. Yeah, Mantle and not Mantle, but yeah, Ray. Was it Ruth?
Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Yeah, right.
Yeah. We really had a chance against Murders Row there.
No. But that's how that series ended. Was with a wild pitch. So both times those 2 teams played each other, it ended with
maybe the Pirate pitcher just wanted to go home. I want to go home. I'm throwing the ball in the stands. Yeah.
Speaking of that era, the first ever radio broadcast of a baseball game was the Pirates versus the Phillies in August of 1921. That was broadcast by a Westinghouse/KDKA employee named Harold Arlen. And KDKA actually distributed radios to employees, friends, and families simply to create a potential audience. They weren't sure anybody was actually going to listen. So they gave people radios and said, give them to your friends and have them tune into this baseball game. The Sporting News.
What are these radios of which you speak?
Yeah, you used to turn them on. You could listen to, stuff, music and news. And in 1921, you could listen to baseball games. Yep.
Were they on the internet?
The Sporting News were not big fans of that idea to do baseball games on the radio. Here's what they wrote after that first game. Quote, broadcasting stories of games as the games go along is the equivalent of succotash party with neither corn nor beans. So Sporting News in 1921.
I hate when that happens, when I don't have. Yeah, when I don't have corns or beans with my succotash, I'm just really disappointed. I feel like I'm listening to a baseball game on the radio.
Did people actually have a succotash party? Was that like a thing in 1921?
I know there was a lot of suffering with succotash.
Yeah.
Sylvester the cat thought so.
Hey, Tuesday night, guys, we're having a succotash party. 8 o'clock. Don't miss it.
Sorry, there won't be any beans. It's really going to suffer. I don't know, man. Wow. 1921. Well, I mean, it was 100 years ago. So, I mean, I'm sure they were making fun of people in 1821. It's like, oh, wow.
The Pirates once had a minor league team in Hollywood. That was one of their farm teams. It was called the Hollywood Stars. So that's kind of a fun fact there.
Not Hollywood, Florida, huh? Hollywood, California.
No, this is Hollywood. Yep. And speaking of Hollywood, Bing Crosby co-owned the Pirates for over 30 years. I think we talked about that on one of our previous episodes. And Steve, he's the reason we have footage of
Mazeroski.
Yep.
Yeah.
And why was that? He was in Paris or something, right?
Yeah. What happened was back then was the NBC, I think it was whoever was televising the game would just re-record over stuff. And I mean, I guess back in 1960, they didn't think anybody would want to watch a baseball game that already happened. But since Bing Crosby was out of the country, he had them record it. Now, obviously, there was no electronic recording. There wasn't even VHS or beta. They actually had to run a film camera to record it on a TV that they are projecting or something, or like on a mirror, like they to reverse it, because you had to like reverse the image, because I guess then the camera would reverse it back to normal or something. Like there was a whole explanation. Like they did like a MLB Network Bob Costas thing down at the Benedum with like Mazeroski, and I think a couple of the Yankees were there too to celebrate like one of the anniversaries of Mazeroski's home run. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's definitely a fun fact there.
Mm-hmm.
Retired numbers, we talked about this for the Steelers and Penguins. The Pirates have actually retired 9 numbers. Those numbers are number 40, Danny Murtaugh, 33, Hannes Wagner, 21, Roberto Clemente, 20, Pie Traynor, 11, Paul Wainer, 9, Bill Mazeroski, 8, Willie Stargell, 4, Ralph Kiner, and number 1, Billy Meyer. And if you recognize all the names on that list.
Clemente's retired, right? Did you say
21? Yep.
Yeah.
That was in there. You probably recognize all the names on that list until we got to Billy Meyer. Billy Meyer was the manager for the Pirates for several seasons at a .412 winning percentage. I have no idea why his numbers retired.
He's no Fred Clark, who's the all-time winningest Pirate manager. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he won the 25 series. Fred Clark did, but I don't know what Billy Meyer did.
Yeah, I mean, this was in.
He was like friend with Barney Dreyfuss or something, or
yeah.
on the team back then. Yeah.
Yeah, this was
like, you want to?
This was in like the 40s or 50s, and yeah, I don't know. I don't know why that number was retired when he had a .412 winning percentage, but whatever. Let's go Bucks. And then the final Pirate fun fact that we have is Pirates owner Bob Nutting really enjoys fly fishing, presumably because it's a cheap hobby.
Wow. I don't think it's all that cheap. It's expensive to go to Montana or Wyoming or wherever you fly fish.
You probably just
maybe you fly fish at Seven Springs. I don't know.
Sets up a pond at Seven Springs. Yeah. So those are our Pirates fun facts. We're going to wrap this up with some college sports fun facts. I kind of just lumped them all together. These are mostly Pitt football, but I have a couple basketball ones in here too. So the first one, Harold Arlen. You heard his name before because he's the guy that did the first ever baseball broadcast. He also does the first ever college football game on the radio that same year, 1921. That is Pitt versus West Virginia at Forbes Field, a game that Pitt won 20 to 13.
Backyard brawl, baby. Woo.
It was the backyard brawl at Forbes Field. Pitt Stadium actually didn't even exist yet at 1921.
Oh, yeah.
Here's a fun fact.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I thought Pitt Stadium was around earlier than that. Huh?
No, that's why the game was at Forbes Field. Here's a fun fact.
Have it somewhere playing
it. Yeah. Right. Here's a fun fact that if you listen to our previous episode, Steve actually covered this in our previous episode. The highest attendance ever for any sporting event held in Pittsburgh in the history of Pittsburgh sports was the 2016 Pitt-Penn State game at Heinz Field. That game was attended by 69,983 people.
Well, we can't have that because it's not popular or something. Right? It's actually, I just saw TV ratings. I think that's still like the second or third highest Pitt rated like Pitt game on TV in like the last 20 or 30 years. So,
oh, wow.
Another reason why you can't play that game, because you wouldn't make any money off that.
No.
Big TV ratings and a big sellout crowd. Nah, don't have that. Let's not have that at all.
Nope.
We'll make much more money playing like a team and not have anybody in the stands or on TV at all. So, makes sense.
We were just talking about Pitt Stadium. The first ever night game at Pitt Stadium was in 1985. It was a season opener that year against Purdue. And for that game, they actually had to use temporary lights because at the 1985, there were no lights at Pitt Stadium. Yep.
Makes sense.
Yep. And that 85 game against Purdue, it's actually a really good game. You can actually find it on YouTube. We'll post a link. There's a couple of future NFL stars, including Rod Woodson, that played in that game. And it actually features a pretty wild finish. So that's a kind of one of those forgotten Pitt classics, but that was the first ever night game that they played at Pitt Stadium. Pitt has had a lot of good players over the years. They're actually tied for 5th with most players who went on to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. They have 9 players in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. The only schools that have more are Ohio State, Michigan, USC, and Notre Dame. So those 9 guys, Steve, do you want the list?
Yes. What, of Pitt players?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I probably know them. I know Joe Schmidt, Tony Dorsett, Dan Marino, Curtis Martin, Mike Ditka. How many I'm up to here?
That's 5.
5.
4
So
more.
I need 4 more. Let's see who else. Old timey Pitt players from way back when. Jimbo, the guy from the Bears.
Yeah, Jimbo Covert. Yeah.
Covert. Did I name all the running backs? Dorset and Martin.
You did.
Yeah. No wide receivers. Marino's the only quarterback. Defensive players. I think there's another defensive player I'm missing.
Yeah. So there's all 3 of these guys kind of played in the 80s and maybe a little bit into the 90s.
Man, Hugh Green. No, Hugh Green isn't in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, is he?
No.
Is Chris Dolman in the?
Yep, that's one of them.
Yeah,
Chris Dolman, who played for the Vikings, he's in the Hall of Fame. 2 more. You're gonna kick yourself from one of these because
I'm probably missing the easy one. I'm missing somebody easy. He played in the 80s.
So
played in the 80s on defense, probably.
One guy's defense, one guy's offense.
Played in the Reuben Brown definitely ain't in the Hall of Fame. That's for darn sure. I don't know. I'm
so
blank.
The defense,
7 out of 9 isn't bad.
That's
though,
pretty good.
I think.
Yeah, the defensive guy is Ricky Jackson, who played, I think, most of his
that's
career
right.
for the Saints.
Saints. Yeah.
And then the offensive guy is the one you're going to kick yourself on because he almost became the Steelers head coach. It's Russ Grimm.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
When the Steelers, when Bill Cowher retired, Russ Grimm, allegedly had the job offered to him, but then it was taken away, or who knows what the real story was there. But he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So 9 players in the Hall of Fame, and I think they'll definitely get to 12 because I think that Darrelle Revis, Larry Fitzgerald, and Aaron Donald are all locks when they're eligible. I don't know if they'll get beyond 12 anytime soon, but I think they'll get to 12.
Yeah. Crazy. It's crazy they've never even competed. They've only been in one major bowl game in 2004 and all this time and had that kind of insane talent come through.
I know.
What are you going to do? What are you going to do?
That's Pitt. Pitt played speaking of major bowl games, Pitt played in the 1956 Sugar Bowl. And the reason that was significant is because Pitt had
I know. Yeah. Bobby Greer.
Yeah, good.
Bobby Greer, first African American player to play in the Sugar Bowl, I do believe.
You got it. Yes. Good one. You knew that one. That was a big deal. The governor of Georgia opposed Greer's participation in the game. They were playing Georgia Tech. And the governor of Georgia came out and said that Georgia Tech would elect to forfeit the game if Pitt didn't bench Greer. But Pitt said, no, we're not going to do that. And honestly, Georgia Tech, to their credit, wasn't in favor of that either. Their students and their staff and even their football players, they didn't feel that way. And the president of Georgia Tech said, quote, either we're going to the Sugar Bowl or you can find yourself another damn president of Georgia Tech. So not clear.
Nice.
Not clear if he was, opposed to the governor because he was for civil rights or because he was who are you to say what, to dictate what we're going to do as a football program. But either way, he plays. Pitt does lose the game 7-0. And part of that loss was a disputed pass interference call against Greer that was actually a bad call if you look at the footage. But the referee that made the call was actually from Pittsburgh and said he just made a mistake. He wasn't, a racist or anything like that. So Bobby Greer is still alive. He actually just recently conducted an interview with Heather Lake, who is the Pitt athletic director, if you don't know. And we'll post a link to that. That's on YouTube. So that's a pretty cool story. Moving on to college basketball. I have a list here of college basketball players who played for Pittsburgh schools that went on to play professionally. It's not a big list. I'm just going to give numbers, not names. So Pitt
Oh wow.
had 22 players go on to play in the NBA and 3 players go on to play in the WNBA. Duquesne also has had 22 players go on to play in the NBA and 2 in the WNBA. Duquesne also has a Hall of Famer, Duquesne also has a player in the Pro Basketball Hall of Fame.
Chuck Cooper has to be Chuck Cooper, right?
You're right. It's Chuck Cooper. Yep. Washington and Jefferson, 3 players that went on to play in the NBA and 1 in the Hall of Fame, Buddy Jeanette. Now, to be fair, all the guys that played in the NBA from WNJ were from the 1940s. So, take that with a grain of salt. Robert Morris.
Those presidents.
Yeah. Robert Morris had one guy to play in the NBA. It was Earl Cureton, who actually had a pretty long career in the 80s and 90s. That was the one Bobby Moe player in the NBA. Cal U had one guy make it to the NBA, guy that named Del Beshore, who played for the Bulls and the Bucks in the late 70s. And then Slippery Rock University also had one player go on to the NBA. It was a guy named Myron Brown, who played 4 games for the Minnesota Timberwolves in 1991.
Wow, that's not a long NBA career.
It is not, but hey, he made it, right?
He made it.
So there's that. I don't know that, again, other than guys that played many years before we were born, that any of those schools have really had, hugely successful players. I know Mike James, who played for Duquesne when I went there and who actually lived in the dorm room next to me. He played in the NBA for a long time. He was never a star, but he, had a pretty long career in the NBA. And then Pitt, it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. Pitt's definitely had some good players and even some high draft picks, but I don't know that you could say that any of them are real stars in the NBA. Steve?
No. Charles Smith.
Yeah, Charles Smith was pretty good for a while. Played for the Knicks when the Knicks had, Patrick Ewing and in that era. So he was decent.
Dwan Blair was okay. Not like a great.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's about it.
Yeah, definitely not.
Orlando Antigua was really good for the what's it called, the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right. Right. Yeah. So yeah, not as rich of a college basketball history here in Pittsburgh, but we had some guys have some success. That's the end of our list. I hope everybody learned some fun facts and learned some things that maybe you didn't know before. Steve, any final thoughts before we sign off?
Did I win a version of the home game? No.
You did. We have lovely parting gifts for you.
Oh, thank you.
Good job.
Rice-A-Roni and turtle wax. Nice. Yeah.
All right, folks, please go check us out on our website or on social media. All those links are in the show description. Please rate us on your podcast service. That helps people find the show. And please spread the word. Word of mouth is for sure our best advertising to have folks listen to this. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.